Today is the day that Games Workshop has updated their index cards to correct some errors. They have watched all the index error videos in my playlist, probably, and they have resolved a lot of errors much quicker than I was expecting. I am the index error man. Sometimes I'm known as Christian von Carmian. Today I'll be going broadly over a few of the index changes, with a focus on what has happened to the Genestealer Cult. Separately, I may have to go through my own index errors videos and take a look at what is still there, but that is not this day. Today is Genestealer Cult Focus Index Error Correction Day. An annual event to be sure. So you may see in the coming week that I refer to some things, guns and such, in their previous form. These videos in the hands of YouTube, and I can add little corrections to let you know that that particular error is fixed. But let's look at some of the key changes for other non-Genestealer Cult factions first. I know that no one is chomping at the bit to find out if Dire Avengers now have a close combat weapon. They do, by the way. But bigger things. If you want to re-download these index cards, there is a link in the description. And you know, while you're there, if you want to click on any of the other links I provided, you should feel you have the courage to do so. Let's start with the Battle Sisters. Now, this is not a balance patch. It is to clarify existing rules and remove card errors. It is not further dunking on the sisters or kicking us when we're not doing so great. It does a little of that, but that is not the intention. The Mortifier error I hadn't even noticed, not even during my big Battle Sister analysis. It gets a benefit in the charge phase that lasts until the end of that phase. The charge phase. When you don't actually attack. Now it lasts until the end of the turn, so you can use it in the combat phase. The Dominions, though. Having good bolters was an error. I suspected as much. I think it was just copied over from the Storm Bolter. They are still assault weapons, don't worry, but they now are only rapid fire 1, so you only get 1 extra shot rather than 2. For the AdMech, essentially they remain the same. The Castellan robots still get the infantry keyword when a datasmith joins them. That has not been changed, as that is a core rule interaction and not something that's been updated today because it's not on an index card. Eldari are the bigger one, particularly around their Wraithguard. Now the Spirit Seer and the Tears of Isha, it is now once in your command phase, not in the command phase. So it's not happening for each player's command phase that you're getting 2 Wraithguard back per battle round. Just the 1. It is still very powerful. These are an undercosted, incredibly tough unit, but not quite as good as previous. And this next error correction looks a bit more to be a balancing one. Or it could be considered as, this is something they had in previous edition that they shouldn't have anymore. They've lost their ability to shoot at point blank range when they're attacked. So they don't have the pistol keyword anymore. That's what it's referring to when we're removing the last bullet point. Now in the previous edition, 9th edition, then the Wraiths had this ability to fire at point blank range. Evidently now we're going much more long range shooting reaction fire. So they still shoot once per battle round when they're attacked. They can shoot back and it's still shoot at anything. So they're not limited in the way that the Leagues of Votann are and the Battle Sisters are. It's shoot at whatever you want when you were attacked. They don't even need to lose a model. But they can't do it in close combat anymore because their weapons no longer have the pistol keyword. Imperial Guard! Great praise will go out among the Guard followers that the Krieg infantry can now have a Medipack equipped. And this is very nice for the Genestealer Cult to know that, oh good, just like all of our other units, if we have these Krieg infantry squads, then we too can get models back on them. The infantry, regular infantry squads, they've had a correction so that a heavy weapon team counts as 2 models for the purposes of war gear. What was happening before was you could have a certain number of special weapons depending on how many models were in the unit. It was for every 10 models. That meant that if you changed 2 models into 1 heavy weapon team, then that is now a squad of 9. And so there aren't 10 in the squad to get 1 special weapon, like a melter gun. Now it's corrected and say, yeah, it's 2 dudes. I always thought it was better in like 2nd edition when they were actually 2 dudes, and it was very obvious for all rules purposes how they worked. But I don't need to mention again that I've been playing since 2nd edition. Space Marines have a lot of corrections across the many different flavors of Space Marines. The Black Templars, now their Castellan is a Lieutenant, Helbrecht is a Chapter Master, and the Marshal is a Captain. This means that they can be used in much the same way as any other Captain models, and, you know, the Castellan can join squads that have a Marshal or Helbrecht in them, because now they have the Captain and Chapter Master keywords. You'll be pleased to know that the Blood Angel Dreadnoughts are now Dreadnoughts. Without this keyword, they were not Dreadnoughts. Even if they were called a Furiosa Dreadnought and had the Furiosa Dreadnought keyword, that didn't make them Dreadnoughts. There's no such thing as a Furioso to give them also Dreadnought keyword. It was all one thing to match their actual name. Now, they are Dreadnoughts, and also have the smoke ability, so they forgot to put that in. This is the brand new to download, corrected index errors. Here's the information that says the Furiosa Dreadnought should have smoke. It's not on the new index card. So even when we have index card corrections, there are still more index errors. Oh, Games Workshop, when will you hire more proofreaders? The Space Wolves. Their scouts now have 2 wounds, which makes a lot more sense. Considering how old and wrinkly they are, they're definitely full Space Marines. And when every other faction of Space Marine was getting scouts with 2 wounds, it didn't make sense that they weren't. But hey, Canis Wolfborn, he's got his bolt pistol! Great praise and hurrahs that he's finally got his bolt pistol. There was a surprising number of comments to say, hey, did you know that Canis Wolfborn doesn't have his bolt pistol? Did you know that? Yes. And now he does. And everything is fine. And I expect comments now saying, thank you for finally mentioning this correction of the grave error of not having a bolt pistol on Canis Wolfborn. And their Terminators. The Wolfguard Terminators can now swap out their Stormbolter, just their Stormbolter, not also their Power Fist, and get a Heavy Flamer or Assault Cannon or the Cyclone Missile Launcher thing that goes on top, and then they also have a Stormbolter. So none of them are losing their Power Fists anymore. The Dark Angels, the Raven Wing are losing most of their units. All of the bike models that have been around since like 3rd edition and not really been updated, apart from having very similar looking Primaris variants, they are now going to Legends. So that kind of sucks for Raven Wing. Nothing to do with the index errors here, it's just worth noting if you missed my live stream. And across the rest of the Space Marines, their Grav pistols, Grav guns are all now damage 2. But the Chaplain with Jump Pack still has a worse leadership than all the other kinds of Chaplain. The Factions of Chaos, their corrections, well, for the Chaos Demons, Be'lakor is still very cheap. But he is now a Psyker, so we can throw all of our anti-Psyker Condemner bolt gun shots at him and now be effective. Also, he can now fly. Something that no one would have previously been able to guess looking at the model. Those were clearly vestigial wings until now. Be'lakor, the great chicken demon, the ostrich of shadow. Well, no more. He can fly. The Chaos Marines, their Rhino now has a firing deck. Wonderful. The Chosen now swap their bolt guns for combi weapons, not their bolt pistols, so you're no longer dual wielding combi bolters and bolt guns. And the Traitor Guard have their special weapons maxed to 2 of each kind of weapon, not 3 of each. The Death Guard's main correction is to remember that their pistol weapons should indeed have the pistol keyword. And the Thousand Suns ranged weapons have mostly been corrected to be matching all of the other Chaos Marine factions, and their Rhinos also have a firing deck. And remember, this is now a dedicated transport Rhino, so it will explode if you don't stick anyone inside. For the Xenos factions that people weren't as scared of, the Dark Eldar Witches, they have Poison 3+ on their poison weapons, just like every other bit of poison that's in the Dark Eldar Index. For the Tau, a correction for all their burst cannons to actually be -1 AP and not have different variations of the burst cannon on actually the same Devilfish. The big one for Tyranids, though, is the Barb Gaunts. Their Disruption Bombardment has been corrected. It is now 1 of the infantry units that was hit by your biocannons, not every infantry unit that's hit by them. So they now much more match their points. They are hindering one infantry unit, not half an army, in theory. It was difficult to do, but this is the correct version. The orcs that have mega armor are now equipped with mega armor and have the mega armor keyword, so they now unfortunately can no longer travel in a truck. And expressly the truck can no longer carry Ghazghkull Tharka. Although for the size of them, I'm pretty sure it was Ghazghkull Tharka that was carrying the truck. And the toughness 5 Gretchin no longer, they had always toughness 2, because the runt herd is now changed so that each time any attack targets the unit, not just ranged attacks, then the runt herd models have a toughness characteristic of 2. Until the very end, when they are just the last one left and the unit contains no Gretchin models. Then he reverts to toughness 5. It was but a brief moment, but the incredibly muscular goblin Gretchins no longer can trouble your dreams. The hilarious Leagues of Votann issue of the Appraising Glare, which lasted only for its command phase, now lasts until your next command phase. So you can count an enemy unit that's on an objective as having 1 additional judgment token than it already has, but to a maximum of 2, of course. There are a couple of changes to how the Necrons work, particularly their crypto thralls. They're still really annoying in a big block of warriors, but now their ability, Systematic Vigor, only applies to crypto thrall models. Not anything in the unit that's destroyed in melee gets to fight on a 3+, just the crypto thrall models themselves. The Silent King's explosion is just for the Silent King, not his menhirs, so they're no longer exploding into more explosions as they explode onto one another. Just him, and more specifically, the massive Catan behind him. And of the Catan, the Transcendent Catan now has reanimation protocols, so much like all the other Catan next to it, it can get some wounds back. There has been a very nice clarification for the Imperial Knights. Their Code Chivalric Oath, Lay Low the Tyrant, that Oath ability, it's now very clearly specifying you reroll a single hit roll of 1 and reroll a single wound roll of 1. It is not every one that you roll, as in the dice that turn out with the result of 1. It was a little confusing, and I don't know if people were playing it that way anyway. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you're an Imperial Knight player and that's how you've been doing it. The Chaos Knights, though, are completely untouched. They were perfect in form and perfect in execution. And I don't think I've been able to find any errors on the Chaos Knights anyway. Good job whoever worked on the Chaos Knights index. And now the Genestealer Cult. Oh boy, that is a massive wall of text. First, the correction to the Atlan Jackals. Now, I never got round to doing their demolition run because I thought, this is going to be corrected. This is surely not as it's meant to be. The way it worked was every time you end a normal move, you picked an enemy unit within 6 inches and rolled a dice for each model on a bike in your unit, and for every 4+, the enemy unit suffered 1 mortal wound. Now, you could do quite a few mortal wounds if you also had the Jackal Alphas in the unit, because then the Jackal Alphas lets you move in your shooting phase, and it is a normal move. So the unit would again get to throw their charges after that and do more mortal wounds. Then if you gave the Jackal Alphas the enhancement Prowling Adjutant, which also specified that you get to make a normal move of d6, then once again, you would be throwing out some more mortal wounds, potentially on the same unit. So that has been corrected, toned down to how it should be, and it is now once per battle round. Now, the Cult Ambush rule isn't correcting anything to do with demolition charges. We're adding a new unit identical to your destroyed unit. It's just specifying now that, oh yeah, it's at starting strength and at full wounds, which we had really assumed anyway. We haven't got any kind of correction or update to the rules commentary. Whether or not the Acolytes get their demolition charges back and can then do their once per game ability, I think it's still a bit unclear. So the debate on that will continue to rage. No doubt in my comments section, because it's adding a new unit to your army identical to your destroyed unit. That surely puts it in line with the text that the Imperial Guard have got when they bring on a new unit, that it is a new unit, so I can see that yes, we should get the demolition charges back because it's a completely new unit that was identical to the one we started with. But I also see the argument that, well, that unit has used its demolition charges, so if you have an identical one to that, then it would be a unit that has used its demolition charges. I still think you get the demolition charges back. I know most of my community, at the time, thought you get the demolition charges back, and I'm not saying it's not rather powerful, I'm just trying to fathom Games Workshop's logic on this. I just want an FAQ thing that says, yes, you get your demolition charges back. Stop pestering us about it. But the great debate of our age rages on. We also have clarification in the large second paragraph that when you set up a unit, all of your models that you set back up have to be 9 inches away, not just the first one that you place, and saying that all the models have to be within 3 inches of the ambush marker. This is perfectly fine and reasonable. It's a 32mm base as the recommended token size, and it's not wholly within, so you should be able to get even 20 neophytes within 3 inches of that. It's just going to be a very big blob, base to base. And it's a good job blast weapons don't work as they had in previous editions, where you have a marker that you just place onto a unit. Because that would be unfortunate for those units that have just come back, when we're paying extra to have models that do come back. So the Genestealer Cult remain much the same. This isn't a balanced patch, of course, but the Jackals have been toned down. If that was like the big thing that the Genestealer Cult were known for, oh yes, here's 1,000,000 mortal wounds from my biker boys. And I can't see this making a really massive impact on like the tournament scene, other than Wraithguard are a little bit weaker, but they're still going to be taken in large numbers. And if you were wondering what I'm talking about with all of the demolition charge things that the Genestealer Cult have on their acolytes, here's the video where I explain just how powerful the Genestealer Cult demolition charges can be. Until I look at some index errors again, my darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.